my cash right, cause I spent it all last night. Said I'm good to go, only if the bag right. Hit it then you know I gotta do the dash right.
So you've got your shiny new BFS setup, but what do you put on your reel? Braided line or fluorocarbon mainline? Let's find out.
Told her how I'm living, welcome to the fast life.
In this video, we're going to look at the differences between fluorocarbon mainline and braided mainline. I've used both and they both have their advantages and disadvantages. We're going to run 3 specific tests. We're going to do a casting test to see if it affects the distance which it can cast using fluorocarbon and braided mainline. We're also going to do a brake test to see if attaching or splicing fluorocarbon line to braided line holds up against just straight fluorocarbon line and the strength there. And then we're also going to do a sync test just to see how it syncs. First of all, we're going to go down to the field here. I've got some weights. So I've got some 3, 5 and 7 gram Cheb weights, which will tie straight onto these. I've got 2 setups, so I've got both the same, it's very similar rods. This one's loaded up with braided line and this one's loaded up with fluorocarbon line. The lines which we're using are SEAGUAR SOFT PLUS, which is known as SEAGUAR TATSU over in America. Incredibly expensive at £26 for 100 meters. And then we've got G-Soul upgrade, and this is basically, I think, possibly one of the best braided 8-stranded braided lines which you can get. So let's not mess around because it's probably going to rain, because it's been raining constantly recently. Let's go down and see how these things work out. I've already done some of the tests, and stay tuned because you may well be surprised. Hi, so we've just got down to the location. Not ideal. We've got a strong southwesterly wind coming across, so it's coming from behind us. I've got 2 setups which we'll use. They're basically exactly the same, should perform very, very similar. So I've got a Legend tournament by St. Croix with Calcutta Conquest BFS, and this is loaded up with 8-stranded braid. It's G-Soul upgrade, £22, it's PE one, and it's connected to a fluorocarbon leader with an FG knot. This is an Illex P.E with a Diawa Alpha's Air, and it's loaded up with TATSU braid, which is £6. Let's try 3 different weights. Let's try 3 grams, 5 grams and 7 grams and see how they compare to each other. Okay, first setup. This is the St. Croix with the Calcutta and 7 gram Cheb weight. Let's just do a straight cast. Straight overhead cast and see how it goes. Okay. So this is with the Illex and straight fluorocarbon. Okay. I thought it had jammed, but actually it's cast the whole line. I don't have enough line to go, but it was going to carry on going. Let's go and have a look and see where those are both at. Well, it's landed here, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 yards out to here, but it's not an accurate test because we ran out of line on the other one. So I think it would have come to exactly the same distance. So as with all best laid plans, that one failed a little bit. The 7 gram was too heavy for the Illex P.E. There wasn't enough line. It cast too far basically, so it cast its whole lot. So we're going to try that again, or try this test again, but we're going to try this test with 3 grams, which is perhaps a more realistic BFS weight. So both of these rods have got 3 gram Cheb weights attached to them. we'll cast them out and see how far they can cast. Okay, so let's take this line, let's go all the way around here. So neither of them cast their full length of the line. Okay, so that's pretty respectful. So it's cast out to here. Right, now let's see if we can find where the other one is. I'll just leave that there for a second. So in fact it cast probably 1, 2, 3. It cast roughly 4 yards shorter than the fluorocarbon line. That's really interesting actually. So there's a practical real world test. I mean ultimately 3 yards probably doesn't matter too much, but there you go. It looks like the fluorocarbon line is casting further than the braided line.
Let's go take a trip. Had a couple shows. We don't even vote, but you know we taking pose. I don't ever stay in place, girl. I gotta go get my bag though. I don't even gotta pack though. They don't even know me. Come and leave through the back though. Ass whoa. They been living hella fast though. When they hit the brakes, that's when I go and hit the gas though. Don't get too attached, cause you know that I can't stay. Yeah, I hit the road. I don't even need a place. Life is like a phase. Got a lot up on my plate. Finish that tomorrow, cause I gotta live today. Get my cash right, cause I spent it all last night. Said I'm good to go, only if the bag right. Hit it then, you know I gotta do the dash right. Told her how I'm living, welcome to the fast. Get my cash right, cause I spent it all last night. Said I'm good to go, only if the bag right. Hit it then, you know I gotta do the dash right. Told her how I'm living, welcome to the fast life.
Fast life, new chains. Shout out to Kicks and Dale. Y'all better wish me well. Too sick on a different trail. You know how I get down when it comes to the pack. When it comes to the raps, gotta pick up the racks. I'm running them laps, good ass weed. Waiting on me at the spot. Promoters, they loving a nigga, they send a deposit, I'm sending the drops. I'm running around with the baddest, she get the fitty and I get the why. Business on the scene, might like the doors, I'm fucking the shop. The money is out of my range, need to hit the foreign exchange. Turn this cash to USD, right before I hit my plane. That's when I order my drinks, then I convert and wrote my verse to this. Right after my champagne, I'm counting my money like damn, I work for this. Woo. Now I'm landing, left you where you standing. Guess who still can't trust these hoes, I live in my bandit. I got shit to do, you can't fuck up my planet. If I wanna see tomorrow, then I gotta let it bang.
Get my cash right, cause I spent it all last night. Said I'm good to go, only if the bag right. Hit it then, you know I gotta do the dash right. Told her how I'm living, welcome to the fast life.
Right, so let's have a look at some of the results we got from our testing. Let's look at the casting first of all. So we were using incredibly high-end fluorocarbon main lines. These are incredibly limp and they also have very, very little memory. So these high-end fluorocarbon main lines like Sunline, FC Sniper or SEAGUAR TATSU are really perfect for casting with. But if you try and use just normal basic fluorocarbon line as a main line, you're going to come unstuck pretty quickly. Basically, it's very stiff material and it doesn't work very well on high-end bait casters for BFS fishing. The next thing as well is when you're attaching braided line to fluorocarbon line, it creates a knot. Now that knot has to run through the guides and can sometimes catch on the guides of the rod when you're casting. Also, the knot can actually catch on the main line itself, creating a knot in the line itself, which is incredibly annoying. And possibly the last limitation of this is your gear. So not all BFS gear is built the same. Some of it is incredibly high end, very expensive, and will cast very, very well. Whereas some of the lower end BFS gear will struggle at the lower weights. So those were some of the limitations which we had when we were casting. Okay, so let's have a look at the strength test. So when you're splicing braid to fluorocarbon line, you really need to be skilled in a few knots. To be able to retain some of the breaking strain, you'd need to be able to be skilled at the FG knot or the improved Alberto knot to retain some of that strength. So it wasn't surprising that the braided line attached to the fluorocarbon broke before the straight fluorocarbon. But it wasn't really that marked. There was actually only a 10% loss in strength. The fluorocarbon broke straight at 4.5 pounds, and the fluorocarbon joined to the braid broke at actually only 4 pounds, so there was a 10% loss. The more worrying thing was that the SEAGUAR TATSU line was rated to 6.6 pounds breaking strain, and it broke at 4.5 pounds breaking strain, which is a bit weird. So just keep that in mind. So lastly, let's look at the sink test. That one was very hard to see on camera, but both lines, when I put them onto the water, didn't break the surface tension of the water. So they both floated initially. Now that's unrealistic in the fishing circumstances because you're always going to have some weight, so it will pull it under. So what I did was I pushed the line under the water with my finger to just break that surface tension. And we saw something quite different happen then. So the braided line basically was neutrally buoyant. It kind of just hung around just under the surface of the water, whereas the fluorocarbon line actually sunk quite quickly down to the bottom. So there is a difference between the two of them, although it's very difficult to show on camera. The other things which we've got are visibility underwater. That was very, very obvious. Now, when I looked at the fluorocarbon line under the water, it was almost invisible, and that's because fluorocarbon has the reflective index of water, and so it's incredibly stealth in comparison to braided line. Now that's good for being under the water, but when you're casting, you want to be able to see where you're going as well. So it's a plus and a minus, because often in low light conditions or not ideal lighting conditions, you might lose your line when you're actually trying to cast out. So you might actually lose a bit of that accuracy. And also, if there are any fly fishermen out there in the audience, you know well that you actually watch your line on the surface as a bite indicator, and so that's another thing which you've lost with fluorocarbon. That said, you get better bite indication on a slack line on fluorocarbon, which you don't get on braided line, but you get better bite indication on a tight line with braid. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Another thing which I'm really not going to touch upon much, because I don't actually have any experience of this, but like there is apparently a noise factor. So braid does make more of a noise as it goes through the guides, whereas fluorocarbon is quieter. Does that affect a fish? Personally, I struggle to believe that. So, to surmise this whole test, what are my thoughts? Quite simply, if you can afford to go and get yourself the very top end fluorocarbon main lines, I think it's worth it. And I think it's worth it probably for ease of use more than anything. You're not going to have to keep on splicing bits of fluorocarbon onto the end of your braided line. And so with that, I think top end fluorocarbon lines like SEAGUAR TATSU or Sunline FC Sniper, definitely worth using. If you can't afford those, don't go and use just straightforward fluorocarbon line and use it as a main line and hope to get away with it. It's not going to work. And so for probably 90% of you out there, I'd say stick with your braided line and get good at those FG knots and the improved Alberto knot. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and hit that bell notification.